Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Pod Theory. I'm your host, Jason Cercone, and today we're talking about how to build your optimal listener profile. If you've ever built a customer avatar for your brand or company, then developing an optimal listener profile is going to be a similar exercise for you. And if you've never done anything like this before, this exercise can actually be a lot of fun. Building an optimal listener profile allows you to identify components of your listeners that will ultimately help you build your collective audience. Targeting each of these factors will give you an edge when it comes to creating content. If you don't have an idea of who should be listening to your podcast, it's going to be hard to map out what topics you should be focusing on. The criteria that you utilize will all come into play as your profile comes together. And the components that you're going to want to look at for your optimal listener are the following: age, gender, what industry or niche they work in, their hobbies and interests, their location, their lifestyle, causes they believe in, what problems your listeners face, and what causes them pain. If you can identify these characteristics, then you can mold and shape your content to be catered directly to this particular individual. Instead of haphazardly throwing a show together that doesn't connect with the optimal listener, you can build a stronger connection by seemingly speaking one-on-one to every listener you have, by getting inside their psyche, by solidifying their trust in you, and keeping them engaged with all of your content. Let's build an optimal listener profile using the criteria I just explained. For this example, we'll say your brand is centered around dog care. So your podcast naturally focuses on dogs. Bathing tips, best foods, best toys, how to be the best dog owner you can be, etc., etc. This is a pretty niche subject, and we know dog lovers will find value in this content because I'd say 99% of dog owners want to shower their pet with the best on every level. So now that you know your niche audience, let's drill down to the individual listener. And let's talk about Sally Jones. Sally Jones is 26 years old and lives in Austin, Texas. Sally is a freelance writer who works from home and has a black lab named Freddie. Sally starts her day at the gym and does yoga 3 times a week. In addition, she loves taking 3-mile walks with Freddie every day to keep both herself and her pup in great shape. Every year, Sally gives a donation to the shelter where she rescued Freddie. She feels that she does a lot for her dog, but one of the things she struggles with is Freddie's diet. Sally wants to ensure she's giving him the best food she can, but she doesn't want to break the bank to keep his diet in check. Now, as you develop content, you're not speaking to the masses. You're speaking directly to Sally. And the more you speak directly to Sally, the more Sallys you're going to find because the value is there and you've clearly defined who you want your content to cater to. You can find more Sallys by determining where Sally spends her time online, what pushes her to respond to calls to action. You can also speak to Sally directly and get feedback. You can do this literally. Get on the phone with Sally, or you can run a poll or conduct a survey. The deeper you dig into these important components now, the easier it's going to be to create quality content as your show continues to grow. Sally will love your show because you're speaking to her in terms of benefit. She's going to find solutions to her problems with Freddie's diet from you while building her trust in you and your brand in the process. And because you provided a solution to Sally's biggest concern, she's going to stick around and see what else you have to offer. Before too long, I'm willing to bet you're going to end up solving a problem of Sally's that she didn't even know she had. Podcasting is all about making a connection. And when you can connect with your listeners on a personal level by knowing who they are, what they love, and what problems they face, your ability to pull them in and keep them hooked on your podcast instantly amplifies. If a listener feels they share some commonalities with the podcast host that they're listening to, it's going to be very hard for them to turn away from what you're offering. After all, who turns their back on a trusted friend, right? Building an optimal listener profile is fun because it gets you deeply connected to the audience you wish to grow, and it provides much needed feedback to help you shape your content going forward. Whether you're just getting started with your podcast or your show has been out for some time, you can leverage this exercise to your advantage and get a sharper portrait of who your listener truly is. And with that, we've reached the finish line on episode 65 of Pod Theory. To help you execute building your optimal listener profile, I put together a quick worksheet that you can access on the podcast resources page on my website. Visit www.jasoncercone.com/resources and click on the Optimal Listener Profile worksheet. Good talk. I'll see you back here next time. This has been Jason Cercone on Pod Theory.